to grace, strength to strength, all for your glory. You are here, moving in our midst. Worship you, I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you, oh, I worship you. Darkness, my God, that is who you are. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. You are here, touching every heart. I worship you, yes, I worship you. You are here, healing every heart. I worship you, oh, I worship you. You are here, turning lives around. I worship you, oh, I worship you. You are here, making every heart. I worship you, Lord, I worship you. And you are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Yes, it is. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. 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 Yeah. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are. Rating with you and makes it that much rating with you and makes it that much better. And everything in between. Understand those words: waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, not a God, my God. He is personal. He is right there with you, sometimes carrying you through those storms. Cling to him. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Come on. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop. You never. Come on, let me hear you. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop. You never stop working. No, you never stop. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop. You never stop working. You never stop. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop. You never stop working. You never stop. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop. You never stop working. You never stop. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop. You never stop working. You never stop. You never stop working. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Yeah. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. 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 Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. It's who you are. You are there all the time. Good times and bad. And we thank you for that. Help us to not forget that either. There is no reason to feel alone when the creator of the universe is walking hand in hand with you. So help us to seek you every morning, every evening, with every breath we have. You are good, and we thank you. Spirit, move this morning. In Jesus' precious name, amen.
Make that happen or not. Other people's vision is, how about just one service every Sunday? Well, we'll see about that one, but yeah, it's a special time. As David said, he's 58. Yeah, never have gone through a building program, and I've been through a few in my days, and they're really special and unique. Really, a vision is a vision of who God is, of who He is wanting us to be, and what He is wanting us to do. And the being and the doing go together. Many say being precedes doing. I believe that to be true. There's a verse in Scripture, Proverbs 29:18, in the King James Version. It says, where there is no vision, the people perish, but he that keeps the law, happy is he. And a lot of folks use that verse in like building programs, and really it's not a vision of a building, it's a vision of who God is. And a vision of his commandments, form a divine communication or a revelation, a prophecy, a dream. And it says where they perish, it means to cast off, meaning when we don't see God, when we don't hear from God, we go and we do our own thing. We make things up, our own truth. And so when we don't understand who God is, we don't understand his commandments, his communication, we just go, and we make it up as we go. And it uses this word, and when we do that, we perish. We don't do well. But it says that he who keeps the law, happy is that person. And so when there's not an understanding of who God is, and And when we don't obey what he tells us to do, there's unhappiness. And sometimes I wonder if that isn't a reason why there's a lot of unhappy people these days. Not the only reason, but is it a key reason? And so we want this vision of God, of who he is. We long to hear him and to see him. And we want to see him. We want to see who he wants us to be and what he wants us to do. And those go together. And I think when we understand who God is and what he sees and what he wants, it's not a problem to do it. But apart from that understanding, it's not going to happen. Because it's easy to come up with reasons as to why we shouldn't. That's the simplest thing. Again, welcome to Vision Sunday. I'm not going to speak very long here because we have a number of folks that are going to coming up here to say. I'll be back to say a little bit more. But when we see God and when we see what he sees, do you think we'll stay the same? No. It's impossible to stay the same when we see what God sees. When we understand his commandments, you just can't stay the same. Now, you can drag your feet. And you can sit here like this, say, well, I'm not gonna. You can do that. A lot of people do that. Later on, I'm going to talk about why this and why now. Did you know that in Union Township, that's where we're at right now, there used to be 3 churches in this township. Today, there's only 1. You're sitting in it. Nobody knows what happened to the other 2. And I'm not here to pronounce, well, they didn't have, I don't know what happened to them. They're just not here anymore. But this one is. And I don't think it's an accident that we're the only church in Union Township. There's a reason for that. Maybe there should be more. I don't know about that, but I just know that this is the only one. And with that, God has entrusted us to see what he sees, be who he wants us to be, and do what he wants us to do. I go, anyone can stay the same. It requires no vision, it requires no effort, and it requires no God. You got married, did you stay the same? And if you did, you didn't stay married. You had to change. And if God bless you with children, did you stay the same? No, you changed. Things change. And I believe the same is true with God. As we mature, things change. We're going to have some people get up here in just a few minutes, and we're going to talk about how we got here, what the process has been that brought us to today. And someone's going to talk about and going to show you some pictures and diagrams of what this proposed building looks like. And then I'm going to talk about, why this, why now? And someone else is going to talk about the financial components, because I'm going to tell you something. It's just not going to descend from heaven and land on a piece of property across the road. It doesn't work that way. And so it's going to require God's people to do much. It's not a little thing. It's a big thing. And then someone's going to talk about, well, how can we financially make this a reality? So in the end of this morning, and then after that, we're going to break up in smaller groups. A lot of you are going to stay in here. I'm going to take a group, my wife and I, back to my office area. We see about 10 to 12, some folks back there. There's a couple other offices, but David will give you instructions how to divide up and how to make that work. And we're going to ask you guys 6 questions, and we're going to write down your answers and get them back to church growth services and let them take it from there. So as far as a building committee and elders, we're convinced this is God's plan for this place now, and we want to try to help you see what we see and get to the same place we're at. So with that, I'm going to have Wayne Fox come up here, and Wayne's going to tell us how we got here.
Everybody knows me. Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah, it's been a trip, let me tell you. First of all, I would like to introduce the building committee. Is not a new idea, actually. I'm going to take you, some of you, I'm going to reveal some history to you. Some of you are going down memory lane with me, but started out maybe 20 years ago. Jeff Carroll was our pastor here at the time, and our church was growing very rapidly. We were in one service. We were in a sanctuary up there, kind of busting at the seams, and we had a problem with parking with one service. So we decided to have two services. Matter of fact, we bought 2 acres of ground right over there where the park is for parking, which we never used. But we went to 2 services, and then the decision was made that, you know, maybe we need a satellite church, and we'll open the Vine down in Huntington. That was a Saturday night service. That alleviated a lot of the parking problems, but it didn't. And then at that time, we were talking, maybe we should explore we interviewed those church builders, and we met that day Gil Tobias, who worked for Acres at the time. And Gil Tobias is sitting right down here today because we feel like he has been building churches for 40 plus years, I think, as an architect, and we feel very confident in him. Well, we'll just go down the road also. Now, we'll go to like 15 years ago when we went to the 2 services. We opened the Vine. We changed pastors. 10 years ago, 2012, we decided that, you know, maybe we're not smart enough to really know what to do. Do we want to remodel? Do we want to build new? Do we want to buy land and go somewhere else? Do we want to, what should we do? Because back here is our septic system. Over here is a road and the AEP lines. Out there's a road. Out that way was our parking to the east, and our building was very, very old. So what's going to be the most efficient, effective, and cost-effective way to do things? So we hired Acre Church Builders. They came in and did a complete study of our attendance, many, many things. Their recommendation was you ought to go across the road, buy some land, and possibility build a church. So that was in 2012. From 2012 through the next 5 or 6 years, we went through the process of searching for land and finally buying the land. 2019, they formed a new building committee. I was not even on it, but many of the people that I named earlier were. They went and visited many, many churches around the surrounding area, from New Haven to Warsaw, Fort Wayne, etc., just to get ideas. And that's where the process started. That was in 2019. Early 2020, Phil Ellett asked me to be on the committee. Okay, I'd be happy to do that. Phil was a good friend. And so we started the process of, okay, where do we go from here? Got to hire an architect. We was in the process of hiring the architect. October of 2020, Phil passed away. So he was the one that was the driving force of this committee. He was the one that did a lot of research, a lot of stuff, and got us heading in the right direction. The other thing about 2020 was COVID. Many meetings we've had since 2020. I was talking to the the committee the other night, and I said, how many meetings have we had this year? And they said, oh, I don't know. I mean, it was 10 or 12 meetings just this year. The decision-making is unbelievable, what you have to decide on. And I want everyone to know here, this is not Wayne Fox's church to build. This is not our committee's church to build. It's not the elders' church to build. It's our church to build. We are at the beginning stages of this process. We do have a starting point. We want your comments. We want your opinions. We are not running bulldozers over there tomorrow. I will guarantee you that, okay? We are going through a process of gathering information from you so we know what your input is and what you want. 3 things that did happen. Erica Paul, we sent out a survey about 3 years ago. Many of you maybe remember it, asking different questions, asking your opinion. 3 things that we decided we needed in this church. Almost everybody said we needed a bigger foyer. Well, that's better than no foyer. The other thing was we needed a worship center, and we needed the children's ministry to be with the worship center. We need the adults with the little kids. So those 3 are the 3 criteria that we start with that was going to go into that new building. So that's what we got up to for this point today. And I'm going to turn it over now to Gil Tobias, who is our architect, and he's going to unveil what we've done so far. I really appreciate all of you being here, and we appreciate your input. There will be a follow-up meeting. I don't know if David's announced this yet, but on February the 5th, which is a Sunday at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And if any of you are worried about it, that is not Super Bowl Sunday. Okay. It's the week before Super Bowl Sunday. We will have Gil back at that time. We will have more details. You can mull this over and think it over. We're going to have pictures over here on the wall of the blueprints, et cetera, to this point, and renderings, et cetera. You can study it. Be praying about it. This is a big deal. It's a really big deal and a big commitment. And there was times when I saw the prices of lumber going up and the prices of this are we doing the right thing or not?
Good morning. We're having a little bit of technical difficulty, but Trevor's going to work on it. To kind of spin off what Wayne was talking about, there has been a lot of time put in this process. We often talk about the church. And when we talk about the church, people often think of the building. This structure that we're in is a church. The reality is that the church is in all your hearts, body and soul. That's what creates the church. This facility we're in is a tool. It's a tool for ministry. Just like any job that we do, we require tools to do it. If you want to get from point A to point B, you usually use an automobile. If you want to hammer a nail, you pick up a hammer. If you want to show some slides, you get a computer. So in this process, what we want to do is figure out how to make this tool the most efficient tool that it can be for your congregation. So that's what the planning process is. Architectural services are typically broken into 5 phases. I'm not sure if you can all read that or not, but the first is master planning, then design development, construction documents, bidding negotiations, and then construction observation. So the first part of this that we worked on was the master planning. The master plan is the process of looking at your ministries, understanding those ministries, looking how those ministries relate to each other, the kind of space you need to house those ministries, the kind of growth we need to have, what type of sites you have, so on and so forth, so that what we want to do is fine-tune what we're putting together in the design to then end up building. For example, we looked at your site, your new site across the street. It was about 15 acres. We looked at the views on and off of the site. We looked at the water flow on the site. The one thing that you had on the site was the power line going through the middle of it. So in reality, when we look at it to the playground, the higher elevation and the larger side on the east proved to be the best location for us to move forward with in building the actual building. The next step that we wanted to do in the master planning process is figure out, pie in the sky, if money's no object, what would ever need to be built on this site. Understand that a lot of this planning is for our grandchildren's grandchildren. Unless God calls us home before, we're going to invest quite a bit of funds. We want to be good stewards, so we want the facility to last. Now, as we go through this is a little bit closer view of the master plan. What you see in green is what we're seeing as phase one. I'll talk about that more in a minute. To the upper right, you'll see a red area. That would be phase two, or that may be a deductive alternate of phase one, so that we have some flexibility depending on how bids come in. Down to below that's kind of a blue-green section. That would be an addition, phase three, probably adult education, all of this. But the goal is that if we need to do an addition, we know how an addition could fit with the building, work well with circulation inside and outside of the building, and also not look like a pimple somebody's put on the side of the building. We want it to function well together. We want it to be able to grow. The biggest point in my mind is that we don't want to come back 10 years after we built phase one and say, oh, gee, we wish we'd have moved that 50 feet to the right. Now we're going to have to tear down 50 feet of the building in order to put an addition on it. So the master plan is pie in the sky, is money is no object. Let's look at different possibilities, different options, different types or styles of buildings, and determine what's the best way to go. Once we got to that point and we determined that, we then moved into the second phase of services, which is the phase we're in right now, which is called design development. In the design development section, just as an overview, we would look at about 200 parking spaces, which should allow about 400 people to be on site at one time. We'd have a drive-under, drive-by canopy in the front that would go into a new foyer. It's kind of like the pay for the building committee. You take this foyer and you double it, 0 times 0 is 0. So we created a foyer for you to have and use. And it's designed so that it will handle 2 services with Sunday school in between and give you that weekly fellowship space that you need to have every week. We then have the worship center, which is in the middle, seats 300. That's kind of the magic number, because if we go over 300 capacity in a worship facility, we need to sprinkler the building. So we're trying to keep the building in small enough parts that we can separate them with some firewalls and not have to put in a sprinkler system, because that's an expensive endeavor. Then we have the children's ministry area, and as I mentioned, the administration to the upper left, which is the ideal locations because it's close to this facility, and then the 2 quarters down the side that gains access to the rest of the space. Off to the right, upper right, or to the right of the foyer, next, is a cafe. The cafe is designed to be an extension of the foyer for your coffee and donuts on Sunday morning, but it's also designed so that it can be closed off, so that if somebody wants to meet with somebody and have a little Bible study or share the Lord with them, they could come and get some coffee here at the church and have access to it from the outside without having access to the rest of the building. Next. In the purple is the worship space. Now in the center is the 300-seat sanctuary. Off to the left is the children's worship space. Next. Then you'll see on the plans a little lighter purple area, and that's all the support area for the worship service. Backstage area, sound light booth, broadcast area. Next. In the yellow is the education. So that's what the plan looks like. That kind of walks you through the general area of it. Next slide. This is what we anticipate the look of it to be from the front. This isn't in concrete. It may change. It probably will change. They might be minor, they might be major. But this is the general direction that we feel like we need to move forward with. Next slide. This is the entrance by the children's ministry. Next. Opposite, this would be the cafe entrance on the left. Go ahead to the next. And again. This would be the foyer space. The main entrance door would be coming in from the left where the two people are behind the couch. Next. Upper left is what you would see as you walk in. You'd see this would be a view of the chancel in the worship space. So I'll be back in a minute. Pastor Rick, I think, is going to come back up and share with you a little bit more. Thank you.
Yeah, when Gil showed us these pictures about a month and a half ago, I said, build it! But it takes a little bit more than that. So the question I want to answer is why this and why now? And so the number one reason I came up with why this and why now is safety. And does anybody know when we originally built the sanctuary over there? 1871. That was answered by Harold Klein. The reason Harold knows that, he just barely remembers that. He's just a little boy at the time, but I know we were still years away. We were still years away from radio and from television and all the things that no one had lights inside except by way of kerosene. There was no indoor plumbing. It was a hand pump. It was such a different world. And we still use this building today, 152 years later. On Sunday mornings, we use that for Sunday school, for children's worship, for children's education, and also a basement was built underneath it in 1930-something. And how they built that was by shovels and wheelbarrow. That's how they dug beneath the present sanctuary to what we use as a basement today. So it's still safe today, or we wouldn't be using it. We would never put our children or anyone else in jeopardy by way of a building that we didn't think was structurally sound. But 150 years ago was when it was built, so it's far past its prime. And it was not built for its current usage. Here, we're doing the best we can with what we have, but what it was built for is not what it's being used for. And it will not be safe indefinitely. As you might say, it's past its shelf life. And there's way too many doors over there for safety for kids or for our staff, a change needs to be made. And the second reason why this and why now is for kids. So we're building today, but much more importantly, we're building for tomorrow. See, vision isn't about today. Vision is never about today. Vision is always about tomorrow. But for some people, it's hard to see tomorrow because they're consumed with today. So the thing is, get past today so you can see tomorrow. So we're building for today's kids, but we're also building for the kids who aren't here yet. Or you might say, we're building for the kids who haven't even been born yet. And so we can and we should do better because our children and our future, they're all well worth it. Research shows that the vast majority of adult Christians today came to know Jesus Christ while they were still either a child or a youth. It says that 85% of adult Christians today came to Christ between the age. And if I were to ask you this morning, how many people are concerned about our nation? Every hand goes up, rightfully so. And if we're so concerned about our nation, let's be concerned about the church. Someone put it this way, the local church is the hope of the world. I believe that. The local church through Jesus Christ is the hope of this world. It's not education, it's not legislation, it's not military. It's the local church. As the church goes, so goes this country. As the church goes, so goes this world. And this nation needs full-time followers of Jesus Christ. And this full-time need must begin now. One of the reasons I think that you're more likely to lead a young person to Christ and not so much adults, that they haven't had that much time to wander away from Him. I say we can do better. And whenever we can do better, we should do better. Our tomorrow depends upon what we do today, and anyone can do nothing, but someone will do something. So safety in kids, but also for family. An investment into our children is also an investment into our family, and it's not a kids-only issue. We're going to build a brand new sanctuary. When's the last time Union Church built a brand new sanctuary? It was 152 years ago. Because what you're sitting in was not designed for sanctuary. We're using it for that. I mean, we're doing the best we can, but it wasn't designed for that. Let me promise you something. In the building across the road, we will not have restrooms right off the sanctuary where we can walk right in and out and you can hear things and see things and smell things. We're not going to have that. Okay. I promise you that. Oh, my. There are some people, they just hold it all the time until they leave because I'm not going in there. We've got people up there, they're counting. How long had he been in there? We're all kinds of things. They're distractions. We're not going to do that anymore. This space, it's a great space, but what we're using it for is what it was designed for. It wasn't built as a sanctuary. Here again, and when we can do better, we should do better. A new sanctuary with a foyer, which we never have had one of those. Plus a new children's area, it's for family. Listen, I love this church. And I love all that the creativity and the work that's put into what we presently have right now. You all have done great. You've knocked it out of the park. I hear the stories of this building in the original phase when it wasn't finished, but the whole thing, heavy wind came in, and people gathered together and they put it back up. And man, Harold actually does remember that. And here's the last reason. It's because of love. I say, what's love got to do with it? You know John 3:16, it says, "For God so loved the world, He gave His only begotten Son, that whoever believes in Him should not perish but have eternal life." What it means is that God loved the people of the world so much that He did something. Love family. we, like God, on account of love, were compelled to give. And we're compelled to give not of our leftovers. God always doesn't ask. God always commands us to give us his very best. A sacrifice that's not our very best, a sacrifice that has blemish, God says, I don't have nothing to do with it. I don't know what you think you're doing. Would you give it to somebody? Would you give it to your king? No, you wouldn't. Why do you think you're giving it to me? Remember, my first church was in Michigan City, Indiana. I wasn't very long, and I'm at early work. Oh, yeah, it works fine. So I said, why don't then you keep this old one and give the new one to the church? Because I'm just stupid enough to think, why don't you give your best to the church? How do you think that went? Not so good. I still don't understand to this day why we give our leftovers to the church and we think we've done well. When God says, you give me your best, and if it's not your best, you haven't given me a thing. Let's give God our best of all that we are and all that we have, and when we do it together, the pictures Gil just showed you won't just stay as pictures, they'll be a reality across the road. And who knows, maybe in 152 years from now, that building may still be there. And
He called it the fun part. And you realize he's sticking me with talking about dollars, cost. So back in September of 2019, when we all started this, Phil and I had quite a few conversations about what building costs were. They went back to the ministry facility analysis we did to help determine some square footages. And Phil came up with a budget of $2.5 million and a building size of about 19,500 square feet. And that was based on $128.50 per square foot as a budget number to be within the budget and handle the need that we needed to have. If we move forward from there, we actually slowed down a little bit because right as we started is when COVID hit and construction prices started going through the roof. And I met with the building committee and $250 a square foot. One of my contractor friends actually did a church facility that was $337 a square foot. However, it was a pretty flamboyant. I think that architect was trying to get his building on the front of Architectural Record magazine or something. I'm sorry, let's back up to September 19. We needed site work, and when we talk about site work, we have the building cost. The site work includes the utilities, getting the utilities to the site, stormwater management, parking lots, sidewalks, and that type of thing. So in 2019, we were at 2.7. In March, for that same building area, we worked really hard at trying to get the square footage down because we knew the cost had gone up. We had whittled it down to 15,500 square feet, but we were at $240 a square foot. So if we multiplied that and added the site work, we were looking at $4.2 million. So at that time, we made the decision that we needed to move forward. We needed to be as realistic as we could be with the design and give some time for the prices to come down. Currently, as most recent as I've been able to get it, the prices have come down to $190 a square foot. The other thing that we figured out, was that we were using numbers for your children's ministry Sunday school period, but your children's worship in all those age rooms had a higher attendance. So we went back and reworked it. That added about 4,000 square foot back into the project. But since the price had gone down, we're still at about $4 million, $4.1 million. When we designed that space, I mentioned the 300-seat sanctuary and why we looked at the 300 seats. The ministry for the children, all of those spaces are designed so that you could grow to 1.5 times what you currently are. So in other words, if you've got 10 children in one room, they should be able to grow to 15. And when you look at the floor plan, those calculations are on there. Also understand that based on the age bracket of the child, it uses a different square footage number, whether they're on the floor plane or that type of thing. So I think he wants us to work for the things that we need and stay focused on him and his guidance as we go through these type of building programs. So next slide, please. So now, as I mentioned before, we're kind of concluding at this point the design development stage. And typically at this stage, we would be coming to you with what it's going to look like, which we're doing today. Why are we doing it? Pastor just talked about that. And what's it going to cost? Usually we would do a material and labor construction cost estimate. And usually we can do that. We do it very detailed. And we're usually within 2% to 5% of that estimate when we actually bid the building out. However, when we were doing this, we had, at one point, lumber prices were up 358%. Last time I checked, if you order a steel building, you have to put half the price of the building down when you order the building. The delivery time, depending on the type and style of the building, can be anywhere from 6 months to 18 months before it's delivered to your site. So with those kind of things happening, it's next to impossible. So for the first, next to impossible to determine the cost, So for the first time in my career, I'm assisting and presenting a ballpark estimate to you because I don't think that it's reasonable to try and get a price from a contractor right now because nothing's stabled out yet. So next slide, please. So where we are at this point is we're not asking you to vote to build this building today. I think that's important to remember. We're showing you the concept of what we think will need to be built and should be built to meet your needs. There'll be more meetings. Building committee and myself, leadership will be with you, answer your questions. I think at some time in the future, this design will change based on how well the fundraising goes, and at whatever time we select to move forward, where the costs are. And we can all be praying that they're way lower than $190 a square foot. We want to take this time to let the construction costs settle out, and hopefully is a perfect time to do your fundraising, because the more funds that showing you, because I think that's really what you need to move forward with. So be patient with us. We'll get there, and keep praying about it. And Dave, there you are.
Thank you, Gil, very much. And we thank you so much for your patience today. I know we're going on a little bit longer than we normally do, and we are going to do a short time of small groups. Gil said he had the funnest question. I actually have the funnest question, is how we're going to pay for this. You saw those numbers up there, $4 million to $4.5 million. That's a lot of money. So thought if we had some ideas on, we started throwing ideas on how we could pay for it. I thought, well, maybe we could all start buying lottery tickets. Every week we all get together and but that may not be the Lord's way for this. Maybe there's somebody here that can write a check before you leave today for $4.5 million. That might be a pipe dream too. I've been going around asking people, but they said maybe the check would bounce if they did that. So maybe we should wait for somebody to get an inheritance. We may be waiting a long time, more than 150 years, before any of us in here gets an inheritance of $4.5 million. So I thought, well, maybe we should go to the Lord's way of how we're going to pay for this building. How has the Lord done this in the past? So the next slide is just looking at when they had a building project in Scripture before. God gave Moses a plan for the tabernacle out in the desert where they really had no resources whatsoever to choose from. And it says there, Moses said to the whole Israelite community, "This is what the Lord has commanded. From what you have, take an offering for the Lord. Everyone who is willing to bring the Lord an offering of," and it was gold and silver and everything, to build that tabernacle out there in the wilderness. And they took an offering. And next slide is, then the whole Israelite community withdrew from Moses' presence. And everyone who was willing and whose heart moved them came and brought an offering to the Lord for the work on the tent of meeting, for all its service, and for its sacred garments. So God gave a plan, and that's what the next, to say that's something that we could look at to see. So we're going to go back, like what it says here. Then the whole Israelite community withdrew from Moses' presence. We're all going to go home now after we do our small groups, and we're going to pray about it and see what the Lord lays on each one of our hearts to be able to give. And some may be able to give a lump sum, and some may be able to make a commitment to increase their giving over the next 2 or 3 years to be able to build this. But we won't know until we all go home and pray about it and see if God makes us willing to give to this project. So that's kind of where we're headed on how to pay for it. I mean, it seems like an overwhelming amount, but when God's involved in a process, God can do anything. Can God raise $4 million? I know they raised over $1 million for the park right across the street. So it's been done already right across the street. So God can move upon each one of us. So for the next 3 or 4, we are going to go through that process. And I'm not going to go through all my slides because the time is getting late and we need to do these small groups. But I appreciate your patience. We're going to learn in the next 3 or 4 months what everybody's willing to give, and then decide on whether we're moving forward or not. There'll be a congregational vote before we move forward with any kind of building, so that everybody will get a voice in that. And your voices are going to be heard in the next 3 or 4 months. As we do these small groups, we're going to get what are the most asked questions and put out a frequently asked questions and answers to the congregation in the next couple of weeks, the next 3 weeks. And as Wayne mentioned, we're going to have another meeting on February 5th, Sunday at 4 p.m. So at that point, Gil will be back. You'll get to see more detail about what he's already talked about. We're going to have some pictures that are going to be put up on the wall over here of what you've seen. And then row 3, and then row 5, 7, 9, 11, 13. All right, those are the rows that are going to take your chairs and turn them around. And then the even rows get to stay where you're at. And there are leaders with clipboards who are going to be the leader of your small group. And we're going to take you through questions, and then once we're done with that, then you'll be released for today. So let's turn our chairs around. And leaders, the first question will go up on the board.